Shalom Aleichem. And I don't mean that only as a salutation. I mean a true bracha. There should be shalom on all of you, because we're in a situation now which, even though we feel in Jerusalem, Yerushalayim, as if everything is as normal, but whoever unfortunately might have heard some of the bad news would know that we're not in a normal situation. We're in a crisis, and therefore when you say Shalom Aleichem to someone, which everyone should greet, as a halacha you have to either say Shalom Aleichem, or if someone says to you Shalom Aleichem, you should really say to them Shalom Aleichem b'chazara twice. The Gemara says you have to give a double bracha in return. Always give someone back more than they give you. So when we say Shalom Aleichem, in this particular time, we should mean it even more than the normal meaning, which I hope we have. We should really truly believe that I can give you a bracha for Shalom. And we see in this week's Parsha, brachas mean a great deal. There was a situation where Yaakov had to steal the brachas away from Esau. Rivka told him, I've had a nevuah that Hashem told me that you must get these brachas, it's essential. And she truly did have nevuah. But what's the big deal? Let's say Esau would get the brachas. No, there would be a tremendous tragedy for Klal Yisrael if Esau would have gotten those brachas. Brachas mean a great deal to us. When we give each other a bracha, which when you say shalom to someone in the morning, shalom, shalom aleichem, or even good morning, you're giving someone a bracha. Most people don't think about it. They either don't say it, which is a big avera, or they say it as just in passing, without really meaning it. But it's a shame, because each time we say it, we're really saying a bracha. If we realize what we're doing, we can actually put a lot of strength behind it, which we see from the brachas in this week's parsha, how important it is to receive a bracha, to give a bracha, and a lot of major events can be dependent on that. And even Esau, when he realized he had missed out on the brachas, the big, mighty Esau broke down and cried, because he realized what a tragedy it was for him that he had lost those brachas. We would think Esau doesn't care about those things. He cares about food and having fun and running around and doing averos. But he understood that to lose out on these brachas was to lose out on his whole future. So the first thing is Shalom Aleichem.
Shalom Aleichem. Shalom Aleichem.
Shalom Aleichem. Thank you, I appreciate that. Thank you for your brachas. Let's mean it when we say it, and let's say it a lot, because especially in this time, it's a very important mitzvah. The Rambam actually says that there's a way that we have to conduct ourselves when there's a crisis in Klal Yisrael. And there may have been those who weren't here in Israel during a crisis, and therefore maybe they don't know these halachas. I'm sure everybody who was here has heard these halachas, but it bears repeating. So let's just say a few halachas from the Rambam. Where is this Rambam, in case people want to review it, which I hope you do in your spare time, review these Rambams, because they are a halacha, and especially at this time. In Hilchos Taimus, right, at the end of Zmanim are all the different holidays we have, including Shabbos and so forth, and the Rambam, of course, speaks on all of them. At the very, very end is Hilchos Taimios, because as the Gemara in Taimus explains, there was a time when we expected to rain, and if it didn't rain, then there came a series of fasts and Taimios in Klal Yisrael. So that's perhaps why he puts it in Zmanim. It's the end of Zmanim. The end of the Rambam's Hilchos Zmanim is Hilchos Taimios, based on Maseches Taimios. And in the first parak, he starts out, as the Rambam often does, and he puts things in perspective, and he says, Mitzvah saseh min Torah. It's not just a nice custom, and it's not just a mitzvah d'Rabbanan, which are very important, but we know mitzvahs of the Torah are even more important. Mitzvah saseh min Torah liz'ok to scream, ulahariya, and to even blow shofar, the chatzotzros, with the special horns that the Torah enumerates, al kol tzara shetavo al tzibur, on any distressing situation which may, chas v'shalom, occur to the Jewish nation. And even if it's not the entire nation, even if it's just a community, the tzibur. Shenemar latzar hatzorer eschem v'haroz v'chatzotzros. Sorry, v'hareyosem v'chatzotzros. Right? We have a mitzvah saseh to blow the shofar, or the chatzotzros, when these things happen. Kolomar, that is to say, kol davar sheyetzer lachem, anything which causes you distress, kagon, and there are other examples, but tzoris, a famine, chas sholom, dever, or plague, arbe, locust, kiyose bohen, similar things to that. Of course, war would be certainly one of the top on the list. Za'aku aleihem v'hariu. You should scream, meaning daven very, very urgently, not just a relaxed davening, but a za'akah, and to blow the shofar when there is an occasion to get together as a tzibur and blow the shofar, which is to bring us to tshuva. So, perhaps the Rambam only mentioned agricultural problems, but tzoris, hunger, and these things, because they were more common in those days. And war wasn't so common. Unfortunately, in our days, these things are more common. It says the Rambam. That was halacha aleph. I'll just read a few Rambams and perhaps we'll discuss it. Halacha beis. V'davar zeh midarchei hatshuva. And this matter is pertaining to the matters of tshuva. This is part of doing tshuva. It's not just you come to shul, you daven, you know there's a halacha, you're supposed to come and daven or blow the shofar. It's not just a halacha, it's to bring us to tshuva. Shebizman shetavot tzara, when any distressing event occurs, v'yizaku aleha, and you scream about it, meaning you daven urgently, v'yariu, and blow the shofar, whatever. Yedu hakol, everybody will now know when they hear what's going on over there. Why do we hear, like it says Napoleon actually, lahavdil, was walking by a shul, or marching by a shul, or whatever, when it was Tisha B'Av, and he asked somebody, what have they done? I hear them crying over there. Everyone's in the shul crying. And someone told him, they're crying about the Beis HaMikdash, about the temple, the Jewish temple, which was destroyed. When was it destroyed? 2,000 years ago, and they're still crying. Amazing. Right? Even Napoleon was amazed. So the Rambam says that when we hear people doing that, Yedu Akol, everybody will know, Shebiglal Ma'aseihem Aroim, because of our evil actions, Hura Lahem, it has become a negative situation. So we have to think that when we hear people davening, saying Tehillim, someone said Tehillim last night after my Ma'ariv, I hope people where you are saying Tehillim, because it's an urgent situation, people have to stop and say, what's going on? And the answer should be, because we've done Aveiras, Hashem has brought upon us these evil things in order to encourage us to do tshuva. And he brings a pasuk. And the Rambam ends halacha beis, v'zeh, and this, if you do this properly, davening with a loud voice and bringing attention to the situation and doing tshuva, because of it, this Yigrom lahasir atzara me'aleihem. This will cause to remove the tzara. This is what removes the tzara. This is what removes the problem. The problem will only be removed in such a way, because it's been sent by HaKadosh Baruch Hu to bring us to tshuva. If we don't do tshuva, and to do tshuva from a neutral position is hard. We have to daven and bring ourselves to an awareness of the situation. Says the Rambam. So that's what we should do. Now, halacha gimel. What if we don't do it? Chas v'shalom. Aval im lo yizaku. If people don't bring themselves to scream out, v'lo yariu, and they don't blow shofars to announce the gravity of the situation. They just having the news items always is like the same, announcing the situation. Ella, if we don't heighten our awareness, rather, if people yomru, say, Davar zeh min hagolam, this is like a normal thing. What do you expect from the Arabs? They're always bombing us. They're always This is just a normal thing. If that's the reaction, says the Rambam, Hare Zu, this is, what is that called? It's not just called apathy, says the Rambam. It's derech achzarius, it's cruelty. If you talk that way, you are a cruel person, says the Rambam. Which most of us, Baruch Hashem, consider ourselves to be very nice, kind, warm-hearted people. And I can say about all of you here today, and even the ones who didn't come, that they're also warm-hearted people. But, says the Rambam, as warm-hearted as we feel we are, if we don't follow the prescription of the Rambam in a situation of distress, which we are now in, that is cruelty. You are acting as a cruel person. He doesn't say you are cruel. He said it's the derech of achzaris. It's the way of cruelty. In other words, sometimes you're a very nice person, but you do something that's cruel against your nature. So this we have to realize that it's not because you're a cruel person, but you're falling into the ways of cruelty, into the ways of cruel people. Cruel people go by and they say, someone's drowning, doesn't bother me, I have to make my appointment, or I have to eat my hamburger, or I have to watch my show, right? So that's cruelty. You see someone in distress and you don't respond, that's cruel. A person's a cruel person. But this is the Rambam said, if we don't follow the prescription the Rambam said over here, in a time of distress, when people are dying, 3 people just died in Kiryat Malachi. 3 people in their apartment just died. They were bombed and they died. And there were soldiers who were bombed on Shabbos, and one of them lost his eyesight. It's a distressing situation, and thank God most of the bombs either don't hit, or they've hit, or they've been intercepted, or they hit and they don't cause that much damage through an ace. But it's a situation of distress. And if we don't act as the Rambam said, that's cruelty. The goremis lahem, that causes lidabik to cling b'maseh marayim, to their evil ways. And the person doesn't react. He says, I'm an okay person, and this is a normal situation, so I don't have to do anything differently. He's going to now be stuck in his ways. To be davik is to be stuck. We're supposed to stick to Hashem, to be davik to Hashem. If a person doesn't follow a prescription of the Rambam says you're going to get stuck in your evil ways. You're going to consider yourself to be normal, and what's happening is normal, so everything will just keep going. But you can't do that, says the Rambam. V'tosif hatzara, and chas v'shalom, if we don't change the situation, we just consider it normal, don't think the situation will just go on as it is. It will get worse, says the Rambam. Chas v'shalom. Tosif hatzara, saros acheros, other horrible disasters will befall us. And he brings a pasuk. For everything the Rambam always brings a pasuk. Hu shekasu b'torah v'halachtam imi b'keri, if you walk with me, b'keri, as if everything's mikra, just that's the way things happen. V'halachti gam ani imachem b'chamaskeri. I'm going to walk with you with the same kind of blasé attitude. So you'll get another bomb, you get a worse bomb, you get another tragedy, chas v'sholom. Even though Hashem cares about us, but He feels that that's the only way to wake us up. Kilomar, that is to say, kisha'avi aleichem tzara. If I bring upon you a tzara, I'm bringing it. It's not the Arabs that are throwing bombs. It's Hashem saying, this is a situation, I want you to wake up. So if I bring upon you a tzara, kadesha tashuvu, in order that you should do tshuva, so in tomru, shehikeri, and you say it's just happenstance, you don't say it's from me. It's like I'm sending you a letter and you're ripping it up. It didn't come from the person who sent it. Then, osif lachem chamas osoker. I'll bring to you a heated form of anger of the same kind of reaction. And incidentally, I don't think it's only coincidence that one of the ways you pronounce this word of Hamas, carry, are the people who are involved in throwing the bombs. Hamas. Different spelling, obviously, but the same idea. Now, then he brings the halachas that there's formal fasts which were regulated and do sometimes occur, and so on and so forth. But this is how we should be thinking about our situation. And then the Rambam adds, Ukashem shatzibur misani al tzarasam. And even as the community, sometimes as a community will do these kinds of fasting, etc., things to bring us a tshuva. So also, kach heyachid misan al tzarasam. Even every individual. So each individual should realize that this is how he should conduct his individual life as well. He says, Yesh li hisanos alav, should bring us to daven, let's say for a sick person or whatever, to fast, l'bakish rachamim v'tefillah so, and so on and so forth. Okay, so that's one idea that we have from the Rambam. The Gemara adds a little bit. There's a whole sugi here on Daf Yud and Daf Yud Aleph and the Gemara in Tainus, whoever wants to look at it. And it brings another aspect of this problem. So the Gemara brings a brisa, Tanu Rabban. Bizman she Yisrael sharuim b'tzar, when Klal Yisrael are b'tzar, and we should realize that even those who weren't directly hit, they're sitting in bomb shelters, or they're about to run into their bomb shelters, and many of them have had their houses destroyed, or schools, and so forth. Besides the hurricane people who are, in many of them in a similar situation in their lands, far away. So when Klal Yisrael is in tsar, is in pain, is in a situation of pain, upirish echad mehem, and one of the person removes himself from the community and says, right, I'm not going to, it doesn't affect me. I don't live in Far Rockaway, or I don't live on Breezy Point, or I don't live in Seagate, or I don't live in the Toldot, or I'm not affected by it. Thank God, I've been a good boy. Doesn't these sorrows haven't happened to me, right? But it's happening to Klal Yisrael, and you remove yourself from that. Boim shnei malachei hasharis, 2 angels, ministering angels, right? Just like Friday night we have these ministering angels, and we sing to them Shalom Aleichem, etc. Well, this guy's might have the angels coming in the middle of the week because they want to give him a different kind of a bracha. Manichim lo yadehem al Rosha. They put their hands on his head. V'omrim, and they say, Ploni zeh, this individual shesibur, that he's separating himself from the community. The community's suffering, and he separates himself. Al yir b'nechamos tzibur. He'll never see the consolation. He'll never see the final consolation. He'll miss out. Because even though Klal Yisrael now is suffering, but if you're part of Klal Yisrael will eventually have a nechama, have a consolation, have a redemption, and he will miss out on that. Another brisa, Bizman shetzibur shari b'tzar, when the community is involved in painful things, al yomer adam, the person shouldn't say, eilech lebeisi, I'm going to go home. V'ochal, I'm going to eat. V'eshte, I'm going to drink. V'shalom alach nafshi, and I'm going to have a good time. I'll be okay. Thank God, it's nothing's, no hurricanes here, no bombs here. I'm going to go grab a quick bite to eat. Osekain, if he does that, Allah v'kasov omer, the pasuk says, v'hinei sasam v'simcha harog bakar v'shechot son achol basar achol v'shsu. People are going to eat and drink in that situation. Machar namuz makasu basrei v'nigle ba'oznei Hashem tzavakos im yichubar avan azer lachem ad tumusum. That they will not receive their final kapara. Anyways, the whole Gemara here, the Gemara goes on, similar situations, that we don't want to enter those situations. And the Gemara brings, how do we know that when there's a tsar in Klal Yisrael, we can't just have a good time? Who says? So the Gemara learns out from different people, even tzaddikim, the Gemara says. We would think course, tzaddikim are the ones who daven and all these things, but no, tzaddikim really should have less of a reason, because they are certainly not part of the problem, right? They're big tzaddikim. They daven a lot and they learn a lot. I'm more of the problem than them. But even tzaddikim will participate in the tsar of the tzibur. They will join together and empathize and daven, etc. And the Gemara says, where do we learn from? Shekein matzinu b'Moshe Rabbeinu. We find by Moshe Rabbeinu. Shetzir atzmo im hatzibur. Moshe Rabbeinu caused himself a bit of discomfort for the sake of the people who were in great distress. Shenamar, famous Mishnah in Rosh brings us down as well. V'yedei Moshe kavedim. Moshe's arms were heavy. He had to sit down. V'yikchu even v'yisimu tachto. They put a rock underneath Moshe to sit down. Right? Now Moshe was not only the gadol ador, he was like the king. Right? So you want the king to sit down, you bring him a rock. Right? No. The kilo haya Moshe kar achas. We just had this in the Gemara and Sukkah, right? Did he not have a car? What's a car? Not an automobile, but a pillow, right? Didn't he have a pillow? Ask the Gemara. Why do you have to sit on a rock? Oh, kessis, the other word we have in our Gemara, a car or a kessis or a cushion. Achas, didn't have one anywhere to bring to the gadol, right? He's about to sit down. You couldn't bring him a nice cushiony chair. Leishivalav Ella. Rather, why didn't they do that? Why didn't they bring him a nice cushy chair? Omar Moshe. Moshe told them. Moshe requested the rock. Since the nation is in a situation of tsar, they were fighting a war against Amalek at that time. I'm not going to be fighting there. I'm not on the front line, but I want to feel some of that tsar. I want to feel that same way, said Moshe Rabbeinu. Now we're not even talking about davening. He was davening anyways. But he wanted to feel the tsar. He wanted to feel the pain. And that's a kal v'chomer. The tzaddikim do that. We should certainly, we're more of the problem than they are. Elakach amar Moshe. Moshe said the following. Yisrael shruim b'tzar. Since Klal Yisrael are in a situation of distress and pain, I'm also going to join them in that. And what happens if you do? Are you going to get rewarded, or will you just get a sore tuchus? If you do go ahead and you cause yourself some distress to empathize with those who are on the front lines, again, he will see the consolation. You want to see the consolation? You want to see the happy days of Klal Yisrael? You want to join in when things get good? So you have to be there when things get bad. Even if you're going to be in your nice Jerusalem or Mali Adamim apartment in Baruch Hashem, we're so far away. You know, they show on the diagrams that they have bombs that could reach us. Chas v'shalom. They have bombs, they just haven't been able to utilize them yet. And then we have in the north, people who are aiming their bombs on us. And they're all from all directions, right? We just shouldn't sit and think everything's hunky-dory. But in the meantime, thank God we haven't been affected. But still, that's not an excuse. We have to realize that we want to see the better days. We want to see days when Jews won't be wiped out by hurricanes and Jews won't have to worry about being bombed every day. Then we have to do this to ourselves. Now, this could be a simple thing, right? Obviously, we don't always look for pain. That's not our bag. It's not our way, right? We don't have to look out for painful situations. But in this situation that the Jewish nation's in now, we should try to do something to diminish our pleasure. For example, like it says on Tisha B'Av, if you sleep with 2 pillows, try to sleep with 1 pillow, right? And some people on Tisha B'Av put a rock under to make it a bit harder, to make it a bit more difficult, whatever. There were Gedolim who during these kind of situations wouldn't sleep on their bed at all. They slept on the bench, which works. You can get some kind of a sleep, but it's certainly not a comfortable way to sleep. And it seems like, what would that help? What does that help? Who do I help? I'm not there, so why should I have to do that? Because we have to empathize. And by the way, it's one of the ways to improve your learning. You know that by empathizing, you improve your learning. It's called noise ba'olim chavero. To empathize, to be noseh, to bear the the burden. He's bearing a burden. I want to bear it with him. Like Moshe Rabbeinu went out to the nation and helped them with their burdens. That's one of the signs that he was a true gadol. So that's a midah toiva that we have to try to emulate. Noise ba'olim chavero. It's one of the 48 ways to acquire wisdom. It's brought down in the 48 ways. Noise ba'olim chavero. Just by empathizing with other people, you open up your heart a little bit more to really realize the situation. Hashem will help you to open up your heart to understand the Gemara. The Gemara is not easy. The Rashi is not easy. Tosafot is not. It's all difficult, but it will become easier if you empathize with other people. Which, of course, every day we have opportunities to empathize with our spouses, with our children, with other people who we hear about problems, and we don't really take the time to empathize. But if we do, which isn't that big a deal, we're anyways hearing our wife telling us how something went wrong, and we can either pay attention or not feel anything. And if we do feel something, our learning will improve as well. So that's just a piece of advice, that you want your learning to improve. If everything we said till now wasn't enough of an inspiration, I hope that's enough of an inspiration. People have a hard time with their learning. I'm not saying anyone here has a hard time with their learning, but I have a hard time with my learning, and I know if I would become more empathetic, then my learning would improve as well, because all the 48 ways are things, some of them are simple things. The first one is learn. Sit down and learn. Another one is to do chazara. Another one to not get angry. There are other ways of improving your learning as well. But this is something that right now we have to do it. The Rambam says if we don't do it, we're cruel. And it has to also involve davening more urgently and trying to do things which cause people to realize. The Rambam says, by doing all this, people realize the situation. We have to do something to make people realize, right? Not to hit them over the head, but to pleasantly make people aware that we're in a crisis, and it has to change us. We have to rise to the occasion. Our davening has to be a different kind of a davening. We can't just daven as we do every day. We have to try to daven with a sense of urgency. If anybody I remember one time my kid fell out of a window. Thank God it wasn't a high story, right? But we had to rush into the hospital. It was Rosh Chodesh Elul of all days, and it was just after Shalosh Yudas. Here we are in the hospital. Anyone ever had a situation like that knows you daven differently. You daven with a sense of urgency. If your wife even is in childbirth, you daven with tremendous urgency. That's the same urgency that we have to try to daven with now. There are people who are dying as we speak. People who are dealing with broken legs and broken houses and broken things, and that is a tzara to Klal Yisrael that we have to participate in, and not just to empathize, which we said before, but to daven urgently, because that could change the situation. Obviously, as the Rambam says, to bring ourselves to tshuva, to change even a small thing that we say, no, I've been doing something wrong, and I haven't had the strength to change that, but I'm going to try to change that now. And even if it's not the complete tikkun, you can't completely fix that. They say they one time saw the Rabbi Yisrael Salanter walking with a very big smile on his face, and he was the one who started the whole Musar movement. He did not always walk around with a smile on his face, like Rabbi Chanan Wasserin. Also, he was known to have not a smiley face, and when you see a gadol like that smiling, you know something special has happened. So they asked Rabbi Yisrael Salanter, why? What happened? He said he'd been working on a certain midah for 27 years, and he finally feels he overcame it. So obviously these things aren't easy, and it could take a long time, but if we commit ourselves to trying to say, at least in one situation, I'm not going to answer back my wife with a snotty comment, right? Or I'm not going to just walk by when someone needs my help. Any little thing that we commit ourselves to at this time is a tremendous help to Klal Yisrael. Because Hashem says, I brought the tzara to wake them up, and they're waking up. I don't have to bring any more tzaras. Baruch Hashem, it's working. He gave us medicine, it's working. You don't have to increase the dose. And I thought it was interesting that in this week's Parsha, not only is Rechovot mentioned, he dug a well and called it Rechovot, and now Rechovot is on the front lines, and also Beersheba is named in this week's Parsha. And Beersheba is on the front line. Something to think about. Hashem is sending us little tiny messages. There's another part of the Parsha which I believe also will help us at this time, to see Esav's reaction, as we said before, to losing the brachas. What was his reaction? He screamed out the same word that the Rambam said we should be doing in this time of distress. Who could we learn from? Learn from Esav, HaRasha. Sometimes you can learn from a Rasha. He found he lost something very, very important. It says, what was his reaction? Kishmoa Esav es divrei aviv. When Esav heard the bad news that he had lost out on the brachas, his brother had ripped him off. Vayitzak tza'aka gedolah. He cried out, a great crying out. Esav cried out. Not just a little thing, but the Torah says tza'aka gedolah. It was a great crying out, umara, and bitter. Bitter crying out. Try that. Try just once a day. Try one of those tablets once a day. Tza'aka gedolah umara, and not just that, ad ma'od. Ad ma'od. Ma'od, the Torah almost never says ma'od. Right? When it says ma'od, Chazal, wake up. He did this. How many different extra words are there? Yitzhak already tells me he cried out. But it doesn't just say, but Yitzhak tza'aka. Well, what else? If you cry out a crying, what else do you cry out? Crying out is already says the whole thing. No, Torah wants to say, cried out, tza'aka, a crying out that was gedolah, great, umara, and bitter, ad ma'od, very, very much. And the Chazal say we suffered from that. We suffered from that. The Gemara says, it's brought in the Midrash Yalkut, I found it here, I think it's brought in other places, it says, one za'aka, one of these cryings out that the Rambam says that's what we're supposed to be doing now for the situation. One of those that Hizika Avinu Yaakov le'Esav, that it's considered that Yaakov caused Esav to, even though he had to do it, but he's still the cause of Esav's suffering. We have to pay back for that. We paid back for that. When Amasai Nifralo b'Shushan Abira, we had to pay back in Shushan Abira. In the days of the Haman and the annihilation decree, which really was going to happen, except they implored Hashem, but it came out. It says, "Vayizak zaka gedolah mara." Right? They cried out, a great crying out at that time because of the decree. That wasn't being paid back because we caused Esav, HaRasha, to cry out. Right? So one of those cryings out caused a tremendous reverberation in time. Imagine if we cry out for the right things. It will be like Esav, even once a day, and cry out a great and bitter and very, very much so crying out. How much could it reverberate into saving Jewish lives and saving people from tragedy, and saving people from discomfort? And it says also that he cried. After all that, he finally wanted to get one bracha. He asked his father, one bracha, just one bracha. Don't you have anything left? Check your pockets. Don't you have anything left? So Yitzchak says, oh yeah, I have one left. He gives him, he only did it because Esav cried. After all this screaming that he did, bitter screaming, it says he also cried. And then Yitzchak gave Esav the bracha. And the Gemara says that was very powerful. He cried 3 tears. The Yalkut Shimoni says, Esav HaRasha al shohori sholosh damos nisma l'rachamav, because 3 tears came out of his eyes. It says one went to the right, one went to the left, one came down the middle. Obviously something deep about that, but 3 tears. Imagine 3 of his tears. So that caused tremendous reverberations as well. Anu. So we, if we cry, the Midrash actually makes a kal vachomer. He cried 3 tears. We're crying all the time. Klal Yisrael has had so many pogroms and so many piguim and so many horrible things that have happened, we're always crying. Says the Midrash, Yom V'Layla, we're crying day and night. Because that's what the Rambam said we should be doing. Al-achas kama v'kama. How much more so will it reverberate in Hashem's eyes for the good? So my tefillah is that Bezrat Hashem, we should rise to the occasion. We should do what a Jew is supposed to do in these situations, not act apathetic, but rather to empathize as much as possible, even in physical ways, to diminish your comforts and so forth, to empathize. The Shem should see we're all feeling this pain. It's a national feeling of pain, that he should react to that. And we should daven with the same kind of davening, the urgency of Esav, of all people. And we should cry if it's possible. And we should change our ways, which the Rambam says is the purpose of all the fasting and everything. And Hashem should look down and see that we're coming up to Hanukkah, when we had a victory over greater forces than exist today even. Tremendously great forces against the Jews in those days, to try to bring them down. And they banded together in a way that they gave up many of their own personal comforts, their lives, and Hashem reacted with miracles.